So it's actually very
all right. Anyway, let's begin. Let's begin. Share some ideas on the parsha. So the challenge at the beginning of the parsha really is this whole concept of vayifka b'mokim. What exactly is going on? It's a very long Rashi, which you're all familiar with on Pasuk Yud Zayin, right at the beginning of the parsha, that tells us that that Yaakov, right, this whole story with the ladder and everything else, and then there's halfway through that Rashi, or 2/3 of the way through, Rashi talks about where the ladder was and the feet of the ladder and the middle of the ladder, etc., etc. And halfway through the Rashi says, and that's the kvitzas haaretz. The Ramban says that there's lots of discussions about what exactly happened. Everyone agrees in this concept of kvitzas haaretz. Eventually he gets the Choron very, very quickly, right? But vim toima, Rashi says, about 2/3 of the way through. K'she'ovar Yaakov Beis Hamikdash, Pasuk Yud Zayin, the beginning, Chof Ches Yud Zayin. Yeah. It's the middle of that. I'm not going through the whole thing. 2/3 of the way through that Rashi, where Rashi goes, he describes where the ladder is, and if you put the feet of the ladder were here, and the middle of the ladder is here, and it's the ladder that he saw in the. So Rashi says in Torah, so why was it that he got? Because Rashi had described earlier how from the Gemara in Chulin that. That basically Hashem had said this tzaddik has come past the Beis Hamikdash. How could he not stop there? So Rashi asks, when Yaakov passes the Beis Hamikdash, Madua le'ikva sham? Why didn't he stop him there? Why was it that he went much further forward and then he came back, or the land jumped to meet him? Because that's what happened. He was further, he missed it, Hara Maria, and then he came. Yeah, exactly right. So Rashi says. He didn't think of davening where his ancestors, his fathers had davened. And should they stop him from Shemayim? He hadn't noticed it, so why in Hashemayim should they pull him back? Right? He was going to Choron, and therefore, in other words, it's almost like Hashem was saying, well, he didn't bother stopping, so why should I stop him? Why he didn't notice it, so let him carry on going. And then what happens? Kimatalo Choron. Right, because it says Vayelech Chorona, he went to Choron, because that's what it says earlier on. You see, Rashi says you see from the Psukim that he went all the way. He went all the way there, basically, because it's at the beginning. The beginning Pasuk in the Parsha says that he left Beersheba and he went to Choron. So you see that he got there, right? So then, when he reached Choron, Omar he said, is it possible that I passed the place where my ancestors davened and I didn't daven? So then he realized, and then he started going backwards, and he got to Beis El, the Kofta, which was north of Yerushalayim, but Kofta lo ha'aretz, okay, and the land then jumped to meet him, okay, they jumped to meet him. So that's what happened, and that's how you end up with Yaakov being at that particular place, and he was in Beis El, but he was also in Yerushalayim because the land jumped to meet him, and that's why he ended up being both in Beis El and Yerushalayim, because Yerushalayim, so to speak, the land moved. The difficulties here are, right, basically, is what's going on here? How could it be that Yaakov didn't notice? It's an astonishing thing, right? If there was one place that would have been ingrained in him from his father and grandfather, right, it would have been that place, right? Ha Maria, Akeda, everything else, right? How could it be that he just noticed? Oh, I made a mistake. I didn't go. I missed it. I better go back. And then what's going on here with Hashem saying, well, you didn't notice, so I'm not going to stop you. Well, if he's going to have to come back anyway, and Koftza Haaretz, which seems like a much bigger, it seems like a much more sort of event, right, to make the land jump, rather, it would seem much simpler. I mean, explaining it in our sort of terminology, yes, much simpler to stop him rather than making the whole land move. If the land's going to move anyway, why not stop him when he's passing Yerushalayim? You appreciate the questions, right? It's the straightforward questions on what exactly is going on here. The Mechtav Melior says, has a beautiful shot in this and understanding what's going on here really with Yaakov. So he says that when you have an inspiration in life, it can always be lost, easily fades. Anything intellectual fades, it doesn't stay. You can be inspired by something and it fades very quickly. How do you preserve something? You're inspired by something. You can attach it to something external, whether it's a place, whether it's taking on something that you haven't done before, a practical thing. You do something practical. If you translate it into something practical, I'm going to do something positive out of this moment of inspiration, then it stays. Otherwise, it just fades away into oblivion. And a key example of this is tefillah. And therefore, you have this concept, which is consistent through all of the Avos, of being kover mokum letefillah, fixing a place for davening, right? Elokei Avram be'ezra, the Gemara says. Why? Why is it that Hashem, the God of Avram, is with the person? Because we know Avram was the one who said, the Gemara says, Avram went back to the place where he davened, so he went back to the original place. And essentially, what was happening was, says Rav Dessler, is that he was focusing over a long period of time, all of that energy that he put into his tefillah, it became associated with that place. It wasn't just by chance. It's always a good thing to daven in the same place. No, it's much more than that. The place, so to speak, almost ties down, concretizes, if you like, all of that effort, time after time after time, that he put into his davening. And he says that aids the whole concept of tefillah, which is essentially something, although we express it with words, but it's something which needs to be tied down in a tangible sense. And he says that's the idea of fixing a place for davening. Someone's like, this is your place. This is where I daven. This is what it is. Okay. Yitzchak, you sound the same thing, right? Yitzchak, where does Yitzchak daven? So we're told that he went to the place of Be'er Chai Roi. That's where he went, right? Because 2 weeks ago, Chaisara, when Rivka goes back, and she's coming back with Eliezer, they meet Yitzchak. It says Yitzchak bo miboy Be'er Chai Roi, was coming from the place of Be'er Chai Roi. What is Be'er Chai Roi? Be'er Chai Roi was the well where Hagar, right, had encountered the Malach, right, when she ran away. And the Ramban says on that point, that it could be that Yitzchak used to do the same thing as Avraham. He used to visit that place frequently. That was where he davened, right? That was his place for davening, because that was an auspicious place for davening. That's where the Malach had appeared, and that was a place where he could put it down. And that is why, as you see again, the same idea. He derived this like elevation, a spiritual elevation from being in that particular place, his place of tefillah. While he was there, he could visualize, Rav Dessler says, the mercy that Hashem had, even on Hagar, who was running away from Sarah, right? And he could relate that to his own personal situation, and that's what he did. Now, so Yaakov, right, also made an effort to daven at the same place. Yaakov made an effort also to be at Har Moriah. Okay. Now, when he got, as we just said, to Choron, and he passed by Har Moriah without davening there, he then said, "How can I pass by with missing it?" So, what is going on? Why is it that he gets to Choron and then realizes that he needs to go back? So, Rav Dessler says that the solution is as follows: Yaakov's midah is emes, truth. That's what Yaakov is. Titain emes Yaakov. That's what Yaakov is, truth, right? So, Yaakov's therefore midah is that he wants always to acquire, let's say, to achieve levels of ruchnius, of spirituality, through the highest standards. That's what emes is, right? Truth is the highest standard. To aspire to the midah of emes means you demand the highest standards of yourself. Yaakov's perspective is, if I need Hashem to help me along the way, if I need external aids to help me along the way, like his father and grandfather had, I'm not quite where I need to be. I need to be better than that. I need to be emes, pure emes. I don't need those external factors. I want to be right at the top. And that's why. And what does Yaakov say, right? We see later on that he says, when he makes them a few psukim later, when he puts the stone up as a matzeva, and he makes this promise, right? If Hashem returns me in peace, el beis avi, pasuk of aleph, v'yoh Hashem li leilokim. What does that mean? Hashem li leilokim. Hashem will be to me as a God. What do you mean? Hashem is Hashem. The answer is leilokim is justice, is judgment, right? Strict justice. That's the mid of. That's what then Shem Elokim means. And Yaakov is saying, Hashem will be what others can only get through the midah of Rachmanus, the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, mercy. I will get through the midah of strict justice, Elokim. That's what Yaakov is aspiring to be. The highest level, truth, okay? In Eretz Yisrael, Yaakov was able to realize that. While he was in Eretz Yisrael, he was able to get to that level. He was able to get to that level of absolute emes, where he didn't need external things, and he was able to reach that madrega, right? And that's why he didn't stop at Har Moriah, because he felt like, I don't need this. Yes, I know that they this was his initial thought processes of Tesla. I don't need this. They needed it, but I don't need it. I'm not high. I'm building on that. I'm getting to that. That's the middle of Emes. He reaches Choron. He's outside Eretz Yisrael, and all of a sudden he sees that actually I'm not in a good place, and the atmosphere I'm now in is really not conducive to growing in spirituality. And he realized that since where he was going to, everything was focused on external things, the only way he'd be able to preserve where he got to was with getting all the help he could get, right? He realized that he needed help to preserve his spiritual level. And that is why he regretted, when he got to Choron, he regretted stopping at Har Moriah. While he was in Eretz Yisrael, he thought, I can manage without this, I don't need this. But he got to Choron, he realized, chaval, I missed it. If only I'd stopped there, it would have given me that boost, that boost of spirituality, ruchnius, that I needed in order to survive in Choron. Rav Dessler says, can you imagine what would we have done if we were in that situation? He says, can you imagine? He's writing this many years ago, but he was mashgiach in Ponevezh. After he left here, he became a mashgiach in Bnei Brak in Ponevezh. He says, can you imagine? He says that if we're visiting Eretz Yisrael and we forget to go to the coast. Right, he says, we only remember after we get back from Eretz Yisrael. We got back to Chutz La'aretz, right? Okay, would we do that? Would we go back to Eretz Yisrael to make good, right, on our failure to daven at the coast? Would we have that strength of character to do so? But that's what Yaakov did. Yaakov is why he knows that he's in danger. He knows that he's under threat from his brother Esau, but he doesn't care. He knows that he has absolute clarity that to preserve his spiritual level, he has to go back, and it's essential. And he knows there's nothing more important than this. So it's a beautiful pshat, right? What's going on here is that Yaakov is struggling with how to ensure that he reaches the best possible place he can be. And originally, when he's there, he thinks, I don't need this. I don't need the external things like a kaviyas mokum, a particular place to daven in where my ancestors daven. I don't need that. I can manage without. He gets to Choron and he realizes, no, I need everything to survive here. I'm going to need everything I can get. And it's worth him going on a massive detour all the way back, right, to the Har Moriah in order to experience that boost which he's going to need in Choron. So, like, beautiful pshat. There's one part of it that he doesn't explain, and that is this idea of why it was that Hashem says, "I'm not going to stop him." Hashem knows he's going to Choron, obviously, right? So why doesn't Hashem stop him? Why does he let him go? Why doesn't he hold him back once he goes past? And we've explained Yaakov's logic, right? And why he did, from his perspective, why he didn't stop. But Hashem is going to make the earth move anyway. So why does he, why doesn't he stop him there and then? Listen, Yaakov, you think you're okay? Well, you're not, and you need to stop here. And the answer, this is answered by Rav Volben Ali Shur, and he says in Sharavi, he says like this, that the principle is as follows. I read what he says, beautiful words. He says, the principle is that min hashamayim, they are not going to do for you the hisorus. That sense of, actually, I've got to change, I've got to do something differently, has to come, the spark has to come from a person. When he changed his mind, decided to go back, and he'd gone back a certain distance, then the nace happened, that Yerushalayim jumped towards him, and or he got to Yerushalayim, Kfitzas Haaretz, v'zocha lachalom hasulam alavtochas abura b'avur zara tov kol hadoros, hayakol rak acharei shu atzma yisrael espal b'mokom avu. Of course, Hashem wanted Yaakov to get this. Of course, he did, right? But without that spark, without Yaakov realizing himself, once he was in Choron, that he needed to go back, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. It's a very important message and idea. Yaakov has to come to this realization himself. It's not going to be given to him on a plate. And that is why, even though it seems like ultimately there is much more intervention in Hashemayim that takes place, it has to be that way because it can't happen until Yaakov realizes himself. That's Rav Dessler and Rav Volber. Now, when Yaakov says, I'm sorry, there's another piece I want to say that actually links to this. Yes. Okay, so linking to this idea of what it means to be in a different environment, the difference between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, there's a sefer called Menachem Tzion, by Menachem and Sion Zaks, and he points out something which I'd never thought of in this way before. Just a very brief idea. There are two dreams in this parsha, right? There's two dreams. There's the dream here, and then in Revi, right? There's when Yaakov describes to Rachel and Leah what has transpired with the sheep. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, with the sheep and the different, right? The akudim and the akudim and the so in Revi he says no, it's in Chamishi. Sorry, basically he says after what actually happens, it's pasuk Perek Lamed Aleph pasuk Yud, and he says basically he says that I saw in my dream that these sheep were mating with these sheep, and that was what was happening. And the Malach called to Yaakov in the dream. He says Hineni. So he points out like this, that there could not be a greater contrast between two dreams than these two, right? It's incredible when you look at the two in together, right? They're just so completely different dreams, right? The first dream, he sees the ladder and he sees Malachim going up to Shamayim, right? In these incredible heights of spirituality, right? And the second one is about animals mating. So what is the total paradox between these dreams? And he suggests just links to the same thing. The difference is not about the dream, but where Yaakov is. Yaakov in the first dream is in Eretz Yisrael, and he therefore sees a dream which reflects where he is. He is there. It's Har Moriah. It's the Mokum Hamikdash, right? The second dream, he is Al Admas Necha. He's in Haran. He's in a strange place in a foreign land where everything is tied down and weighted down by physicality, by the physical world, and that's why he sees this dream. It's just very interesting to see the two in that context. So now I just want to show you something. It's actually another idea. It's actually another idea of the of Ali Shur, of Rav Wolbe, where he talks about the concept. Let me just find it one second. Yeah, one second. Let's see this one. There's Rav Wolbe explains why is it that we have at the beginning of the parsha this idea of Manora Hamokum Hazeh. What is the idea of fear? What is the idea of awe as it relates to Yaakov? It's repeated a few times in those psukim, right? Yaakov says when he wakes up from the dream. One second. Yeah. So he says, and he says, he says, how awesome, how incredible is this place? How awesome is it? The concept of Yira, what exactly does that mean? And he brings that the Mefarshim explain that there is that the phrases that we use in Shemona Esra, Hagodol, Hagibor, Vahanora, each relate to the way in which the Avos saw Hashem or related to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So the concept of Gibor, the concept of Godol is related to Avram Avinu in how he perceived Hashem, greatness of Hashem. The concept of Gibor, Gvura is Yitzchak, but also it's clear that encapsulates how Yitzchak is referred to at the end of the parsha, the end of this week's parsha. It says the Yaakov made a shvua b'pachad ovev Yitzchak. He made a shvua he made an oath by the fear of his father Yitzchak. The Yitzchak represents that sense of that there is that sense of pachad, of awe in respect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why it's referring to Hashem, the greatness of Hashem. So he says, if that's the case, what's left for Nora? Okay, I'm going to Gibor for Hanora. If Pachad relates to Gibor, to the strength, right? It's that form of power, if you like. So what is Nora? What does that mean? What does it mean? What does this word mean? Nora. What is left for Yaakov? And he says to understand it, there's a Rashi in Parshas Yisro. In Parshas Yisro, it says that I think the pasuk is Ba'avotia Yerosai al Panechem. I think that's the pasuk. The fear, Ravilti Sechato. I probably it's yeah. Is that right? It's the end of the parsha, no? Yeah, yeah. So there, Rashi says, what does it mean, Yira? That you will be filled with Yira, fear of Hashem. Rashi says, Tedu, you will realize, you will know, Ki ein zuloso, that there is none other than Hashem. So the concept, he says, very important this, of Yira, is that there is nothing other than Hashem. The concept of Einod Milvado, that everything is Sar Kodesh Baruch Hu. There is nothing apart from him, right? And that's what we mean when we say the word Yira. That's what we mean, Nora. That is what it means, right? That word for awe, if you like. There is nothing other than Hashem. And that is what Yaakov here experiences. So based on this, I think it helps us understand. It helps us understand what exactly is transpiring here at this moment. Yaakov's realization after the Sulam, and what it does for him is it helps him understand that ultimately everything is down to Hashem. And again, this is a bit that's in the same Sefer Menachem Tzia, and he says that you have to understand what Yaakov is doing here. Yaakov is in a very, very, very difficult place. He has run away and left everything. Ostensibly, Esav is in a much better place than he is, right? He flees, he runs away. He's in a cold, dark place. He's got the stone under his head. Right? He's in a very difficult place. What does he see? He sees the ladder connecting Shemayim and Oretz, and he realizes that ultimately the way in which he will survive and the way in which he will thrive in the direction he's going is to understand this concept of Ki ein zulose, that there is nothing other than Hashem. That this idea of Einod Milvado, there is nothing apart from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why the result of Yaakov experiencing the dream with the ladder is Manora Hamokim Hazeh. Because he gets that realization through staying there, through being there and experiencing that moment of being able to appreciate that everything else that will transpire to him and everything that's happened to him, despite it all looking so bad for him at the moment. You've got to remember the Medrash as well. Eliphaz took everything he has, and he's a pauper, and there's nothing. He's really in the worst place. But he realizes, Ein Zulasa, there is nothing other than Hashem, and that's why Yira is associated with Yaakov. That's what Yira is. And explain it. I think that helps us understand beautifully what is going on here. That's why I titled this shir, Yaakov stops in order to move forward. He has to stop. He has to stop at this place and internalize these message in order to be able to move forward. And then we have, of course, just to sort of finish it off with this, we have, there's a number of examples in the Parsha of how Yaakov is able to take that strength and move forward, even in very difficult circumstances as a result. There's a very short Ramban, for example, with the, when he arrives at the well. The Ramban is on when the removal of the stone. Yeah, that's right. Posuk base. Parachof test posuk base. So not far afterwards, right? Posuk says, "V'nei be'er basoda." There's the well. V'nei sham shlosha ritzon rov tzmala kimin over he ashko adrim mo'evin gedola al pi ha'be'er. And there is a big stone on top of the. There is a large stone on top of the well. Okay. And what happens is, one second. It says where are we going? One second. Yeah. And they say, okay. And then Odenu medaber imam, and Rachel comes. Posuk Yud. When Yaakov sees Rachel, what does he do? He removes the stone. Right? The whole dialogue here is very difficult to understand. Why do we need to know these details? Right? You ever wondered that? It was so useful. Why do we need to know that Yaakov encounters the shepherds, and then he says that, and they gather there, and they say, well, we're waiting here because we can't move the stone until they all come. And then they're going to come, we'll be able to roll it off. And then he says, do you know Lavan? And then he says, yes, we know Rachel. And then Rachel arrives. And then it's posuk after posuk after posuk. He's still talking to them. Why do we need to know such length? Rashi is even more difficult. Rashi says on posuk Yud, they're like someone who removes a stopper from a jar. Says Rashi, to tell you that he had tremendous strength. Well, we need to know that Yaakov was a Superman. Why wasn't it God to tell you his word? Why do we need to know that he was so strong? What? So the Ramban, if you look at the Ramban is at the beginning of it. The Ramban Apostle base. The Ramban says just a few lines. Yarech HaKosov Sipra Hazeh. The Torah goes to great length with this account to tell us that those who hope to Hashem will have renewed strength. V'yirosei, and the fear of Him, titen ois, will give strength. He's come from a long journey. He's exhausted. And he was able to roll off the top of the stone from the top. Really, all the shepherds needed to do this. All the shepherds, loads of people, no one can move it, and only Yaakov. And Yaakov's exhausted. And the answer is, those who hope to Hashem have renewed strength. It's a beautiful phrase. The fear of Hashem itself gives strength, which links beautifully to what we were saying. You understand? Yaakov is someone who has internalized that idea of Yirah in the sense, as Rashi says in Parshas Vayeitzei, ki ein zulosei. There is none other than him. So the fact that Yaakov faces now a challenge, right? And yes, it's a physical challenge. It's a physical strength. But the message is, and l'chora, that's what Rashi means as well, where Rashi says, Lo diach hashekocha God, doesn't mean he was a very strong man. It means that he had tremendous internal strength because, right, of the lesson and because of what he had absorbed from the message of this Sulam, from being in such an incredibly difficult place in life and feeling like it's the end of everything, right? He's 84 years old. He's not young. He's gone through a lot of challenges. Yaakov's whole life is challenging. But at the end of the day, Hashem gives him that renewed strength and that renewed power to be able to be to strong and to succeed. And the very, very final example, which I want to show, just summarize very quickly, is a piece from Rabbi Lopian. And Rabbi Lopian says that it's difficult to understand why it is that how can we say that when Yaakov works for Rachel for 7 years, because he loved her, it was only like a few days. That's very surprising. Normally, if we're waiting for something, it seems like a long time. It's a famous question. And Rabbi Lopian says the pshat is like this: when does it see a long? Most of the time, right? We think we're doing something for an external reason, but really we're doing it for an internal reason, right? For ourselves, selfishly. He gives a mashal. He says, a person says to a waiter, "I love fish. I love fish." So the waiter says, "You love fish?" Okay, so he brings him a fish, and he sees you meet the fish. He says to him, "Do you really love fish? You're eating the fish. You don't really love fish, right? You love yourself. That's why you want the fish, right?" When a person wants something for themselves, then the longer they have to wait for it, right, the more difficult it becomes. So it seems like 7 years will seem like 100 years, right? That's not Yaakov. Yaakov is ba'ahav oso oso. It's not for him. Yeah, it seems this is a posuk chof, perek tes posuk chof. He works for 7 years. To him, it seems like only a few days, because he does it for the right reasons. Because he knows ultimately it's not that he's doing it because he loves himself. He's doing it because he wants to give to her, and he understands that she is the person with whom he needs to partner with in order to realize his mission in life. And in that sense, when a person understands, and he calls that true ahava, right? That it's the ahava of giving, right? Then it's not something where it appears to be a longer time. No, on the contrary, since he understands that this issue is worth waiting for, and it's the ideal he's waiting for, it appears like a few days. Because he's totally focused, right, on the mission. He's totally focused on how vital that is. It's not that he wants it for his own personal interests. It's because he respects and understands her, and he loves her, and he wants it for that. He wants it for that reason, and that's why it's only a few days. So again, that's just another example how Yaakov is able to stay so focused on what Hashem wants him to do because of what he's ingrained within himself, so that genuinely those 7 years feel like Yomim Achodim. It's a remarkable thing. They genuinely feel like only a few days. Anyway, that's a few ideas. Please do share them. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Okay, fine.
Nice. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks for joining. Have a good Shabbos.